Luma gonna bring forth is, if you look at social media these days, you have a lot of individuals advocating for, me, myself, my feelings, what I want, and society has accepted. It's all about me, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes when you talk to certain individuals, you realize their perception is a little bit, it's not, they're seeing things in a very subjective way. That's how I, that's how I try to understand it. Because if I'm having a conversation with someone, I try to have an open mind, but also at any given point, I make sure I am there objectively, right? So if I feel like you're, moving towards your own personal perception and it being subjective, I kind of bring you back and be like, nah, I understand how you feel about it, but this is how it is, right? And we're just going to poke the bear, right?
Straight
and
up.
This is on the topic of feminism, right?
Yeah.
And I'm a little bit more open-minded to understand the whole movement of feminism, because my initial exposure to the idea of feminism was on social media, and usually that's Western feminism, right? So I spoke to someone recently, and when I say recently, that's like a few months back, and then she said, feminism has always been in Africa, and I can list a few people that were feminists, and what they advocated for, these are real African issues that women go through.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? Maybe my idea of feminism is because I'm tuned so much into Western shit that I realize this is their shit. We have our own shit, right?
Yeah.
And social media doesn't really represent society as a whole, right? It's mostly, the camera is mostly on one end. That's where we get all the information, we emulate. This is westernization, right? Through social media, where people are now requesting for things you'd see in the Western world. And a few things, especially from men, because I'm a guy and I'm coming from the perspective of a man. And sometimes what I try to say is, it's hard. It's just hard. Like where we are, it's a tough environment, right? Yeah. It doesn't matter who you are. Men doesn't have it easy, as I believe a lot of women perceive it to be. They think men are having it easy because we have all the power, we're getting higher positions. But I understand where they're coming from, which is true. But this is a very small percentage of men.
Yeah.
The majority of men are living hand to mouth.
That's true.
So I'm going to come into this conversation with an open mind, and I'm going to be as open-minded as possible. I just want to learn, right? And I would always come from the perspective of a man, because that's what I am, that's the experience that I have. So I can't speak for everyone, I'm just going to come from the side of men, because I think as men we have a shared experience on things. There are certain things we experience, and it's very common amongst all of us.
Can I ask a small question about that?
Yeah.
So on the side of being a free thinker, how does being a free thinker link to thinking from the perspective that you were born into? If you get what I mean. So if you're a free thinker, but you think from the perspective of men, is that free thinking?
So we will get into that, because that is interesting. There are certain things, when certain things are subjective, it's not bad. It doesn't mean it's wrong, right? It's because you can't see it objectively, because you experience it through a very subjective, lens, right? That's all you see, and you can't see anything else, which is true. Just like you were talking, I think our conversation was about how difficult it is in the country, how the poverty, how poor people are, and it's hard to look at things from the lens of someone that is, thinking, am I going to make it tomorrow, financially, right? It's very, very hard to really be in their shoes and experience what they experience, because that's not the experience. They've never had that kind of experience. And when, say, a lot of successful business people would say a lot of the youths are lazy, a lot of poor people are lazy, because most of the youths are poor. So if you're saying the youths are lazy, then you're basically saying people are lazy.
Yeah.
But I guess what we fail to understand is, which you pointed out, is you can't really say that because you don't know their experience. And it doesn't mean they're lazy, they just can't see any other way.
Yeah, it's difficult.
I would like for us to go back to that conversation.
So we're having a conversation. I think we started it by me discussing how during this holiday, compared to the previous ones I've had, I've had more people come up to me and beg me for money on the streets than ever.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we discuss how our experiences of coming here on holiday, the money we're spending, and how the increase in prices impacting us, even people who are coming in with foreign currency that is favorable to us in the exchange rate. And one of the things where we had an open discussion about it, and one of the things we raised is that it's a lot of people, a lot of these kids, out of maybe the 9 people that were begging me today when I was at Village, about 5 of them were kids, 4 of them were probably over the age of 16 and above, and those kids aren't going to school. They aren't really being encouraged to do things that can sort of quote unquote benefit them in the long term, as far as the way aware of like education, a trade or something of that nature.
Yeah.
Whereas they're out selling, and then the one thing I saw from that was that at the same time as we can see that we are aware of how few opportunities we have here compared to the rest of the world. Gambia is the smallest country in mainland Africa. About 30% of our GDP, I think it was 28% specifically, if I'm correct, is based on remittances. Import-export deficit was like, I think, minus $485 million in 2019. Our country is in a position where we're not being productive. There aren't a lot of jobs and opportunities for people. And ultimately, like a trade, for example, like let's say carpentry, like that was something that was mentioned. And my thing was that, like, with carpentry, for example, we don't have a shortage of carpenters in Gambia. The people who had the opportunity to get into that trade have gone in that direction. The opportunities that are available, a lot of people have taken them up.
Yeah.
We can't go outside without seeing someone who's selling something. Someone who's selling credit, someone who's selling fruits, like different things. Like when we need to buy something, there's someone close by that just turned it into a business that we can go to.
Like trying to get self-employed in a way to make food for them, food on the table and stuff.
And similarly with these children, they can only work with the resources they have.
Yeah.
So like the Nana story I gave, where this kid came up to me and he was like, he wants to sell me his mint. So it was like mint leaves, and I said no, thank you. I don't need any mint. I actually didn't have any change at the time. And then he was like, okay, I'll give it to you. And then he walked away. And I remember the person I was with, I was explaining, as soon as I saw that, I was like, I promise you he's going to stop and sort of turn around and wait for me to sort of just give him the money anyway. And of course, I felt guilty in that position because it made me think, oh, wow, like that's a nice kid. And I gave him the money at the end. Yeah. However, we're talking about how that's a tactic and it's almost like begging and stuff. And I think with me, like, how I view that is that that's what they can do.
Yeah.
They're doing what they can do, but at the same time, I would prefer that these kids are in school. I think the state needs to work to provide more concessions to people, make sure they have access to food, like affordable food, water, electricity, housing, and all of these things. But sorry about that. But in the country that we live in at the moment, that doesn't exist. This is what they can do, and although it comes across as begging, like it's not a lazy thing to do. This takes work. They're standing out in the heat for hours in the day. It's 30-something degrees. I love football and I wouldn't play football in this heat. They are going up to different people, asking them. They're finding innovative ways, like that kid, to actually get me, to get the money from me. These are all things that could potentially benefit these people.
Yeah, these are all skills they could actually...
Yeah, but it shouldn't happen. That's where we're going to start. But we can't look at that specific thing and call it lazy or useless. From their position, that's the best that they can do.
Yeah.
And I think that as a people, we need to be a lot more sort of open to that. Because at the same time, like, begging is like, to a lot of people that lend their son out. You know what I mean? Like, I don't view it that way.
Yeah.
I understand
the situation, the circumstance. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's so many, like the poverty in this country is not just like in this country. It's not just in Africa. It's in the world.
Yeah.
Some of our people are the poorest people in the world out of 8 billion people.
It'd be a what? 2.5?
2.8 million right now.
That's how many percent of the global population is that?
We're about 1% of Nigeria alone.
That's crazy.
I'm saying.
So, and think about out of that population, how many people are actually in employment that actually provides them with the right amount of payment, the right amount of opportunities, the connections. Like how many are in a position, sorry, not really employment, but position. Not many. So it's difficult for me to look at that. But I think the main thing is though that this country is becoming unlivable for so many people.
Yeah.
Like we're seeing it all around us. Like the money that I used to come with in the past, if I come with double, triple that now, I couldn't survive here on holiday. And a fraction of that is what people are getting a month. Maybe something that some of us that come on holiday spend in a night.
Yeah.
Is what they're getting every month.
Exactly. Like that's what they would expect to use to like feed their families and, you know, do what they have to do. And I do agree, man. But I feel like, just to summarize everything you said, so this is what we're looking at. This is like the problem on the ground. But I feel like the problem always has a source. You know what I'm trying to say? Because we all find ourselves under the same umbrella, whereas like we're the ones going hand in hand facing like, you know, these people, whereas you say you go and like they're begging, or, you know, you'd go within certain other areas, you're like seeing the actual poverty, or you're seeing the actual struggles, or, you know, like seeing the balance, whereas like you can see like, yes, this is not right, or this is a struggle or whatever. But then to me, I just like to always look at it. Let's look back at the source. So we're all here, we're all like under the same umbrella. However, the people or like the agencies or the organizations that we actually depend on to sort of like, you know, help make things better for us. It's because obviously with every problem there's a solution. And I feel like we're all like drowning in the problems right now. But the people that are put in places where they need to find solutions for us, or like the people that actually have the power to like bring in the solutions, somehow I feel like a lot of like the power, or it's just like a lot of it is just misguided. Because in this country we have like, I feel like a lot of misguided talent. We have a lot of misguided sort of like brains, or misguided, you know what I'm saying? It's like there's no structure in a way. Because if we look at like in every country, I feel like when we look at a government or whatever, like there's certain pillars we need or we'd expect to be firm in order for the country to be strong or things to move forward.
Right.
Like for example, let's say infrastructure, let's say education, agriculture, justice, security, what else? There should be one more, but we'll get to that anyway.
So I don't want to cut you off here. I just want to add on
Yeah.
It does seem, well, first of all, you don't leave. This is not your permanent residence, right? You come.
Yeah, I'll come and go. Exactly.
Both of you live in the UK.
Yeah.
Full time, right? And you guys are Gambians because you're Joge.
Exactly.
So I guess what you're saying now, it's because of your experience living in the UK as a Gambian.
Yeah.
So just to add to that, is
just
do
to add
you
to
think
that.
This is why?
I'd say that, and also I'd say maybe the fact that maybe I was fortunate to see things from like different perspectives as well, because as well as like the fact that I live abroad right now, but I'm fortunate to say that, you know, I was raised in the Gambia. This is where I grew up. This is where I went to school or whatever. So I was able to see how things were growing up, to being able to like see things from when I had the opportunity to like travel and like gain exposure. So it's like I'm looking at it from the outside looking in, and now it's like, you know, being back now to see how things have changed from before to now to moving forward. So it's like, that's when I say, like, when I say we're all under the same umbrella, it's like growing up, like the struggles or whatever, like, you know, we feel it. Because if at all, like, let's say I'm living in this house or whatever, 2 houses down, like not everyone would probably have it as good as we do in our house. However, when we all like leave like the yard to like play around, we're playing with like different kids or whatever. So at the end of the day, we're all one. Their struggles would like be something I would be knowledgeable, like I would know of. It's because I'm gonna
be exposed to it.
I'm exposed to it. I'm going from out here. But then again, in a way where some of their struggles might not be my struggles, but then I have my own struggles as well in a way where some other ones wouldn't. So it's like there's an imbalance in a way. Yeah, you feel me?
And not to cut you off, but it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, and with me discussing sort of just where I live and across from me being, I think about 30 just 1 bedrooms where like maybe entire families are living there, maybe 5, 8 people living in one room that's not even the size of around sort of just this perimeter of this table.
Yeah.
And one of the things, like I always played with these kids, and these were my friends. These were the gate to our house was always open, so it was back and forth. Martingalo got out here. So like Martingalo. It's just, I don't know, it's just something my grandma used to say. I don't really know what it actually is. Baka. Okay. Yeah, but like because people were in and out, and I have a huge family. My mom has like 27 siblings, so like huge family, loads of cousins, loads of people from outside. The house was always like full, like felt like a marse. And So 8 a.m. every day till after 10 minutes, skip lunch, we'll be playing football, we'll be doing random things with in these lot. We should go and Jai Ferai at some point. At some point we decided we wanted to just G plants, we'll be mangoes over in different places. At some point we wanted to make cashews, so we'll go to a cashew tree, get the fruits, and then sort of go through the process. You know how you put the bag and all of that to like burn it and stuff, and you know the odors will always come at you because that kills the chickens apparently, the smell of the
smell and
cashew
stuff,
so we used to do all of these different activities
Growing
that
up.
like to me it was an activity. I'm doing it because I'm doing it.
All right.
And I remember I had a conversation with a friend, he's from Nigeria, and I was talking to him. He was telling me about his life growing up in Nigeria in poverty. And he was like, yeah, like after school, we used to go to the mango tree. We used to throw rocks for the mangoes to come fall down. This, that, and the other, telling me about all his different experiences. And I was like, yeah, I had those exact same experience. That's crazy. We did the exact same thing. And he kind of stopped me. He was like, but I think you're misunderstanding here. Like you did that for fun. I did it for survival. And I think going back to what you said, that's like where the disconnect happens. We're exposed to it, but we don't really understand it.
Yeah,
You
because
know?
we're not living in it.
Bro,
It's not our reality.
we don't understand the perspective fully because what we think is possible as a perspective for us to have is determined by our own experiences and our own perspective. So the ceiling and the floor is based on how we see the world.
Right.
So we don't understand how your perspective can get as a person living in abject poverty compared to us. What you would feel like you can do or have to do to overcome that. And that's like where I think we understand to some degree, but we don't understand as fully as we think we do. I like all of my friends, like most of them, like 80% of them growing up like this, but I can empathize, I can ask questions and talk, but it's very difficult for me to put myself exactly in their shoes.
Not sure.
So I guess I'm going to share a little bit about me.
Yeah.
I know how that feels. Because I grew up in Dipakunda. I don't know if you've heard of Tube Town.
Tube Town. Probably rings a bell. Probably heard of it here and there, but not really.
I know Dipakunda, but not Tube Town.
Tube Town. So Tube Town is around the Faro. This is usually where the tie and dye you see at Bakau Craft Market.
Yeah.
It's usually from Tube Town, right? And the liquid they use smells really, really bad. Understand me?
Yeah.
And I lived around there. I grew up around there. I used to go to Serakunda selling water in my head, right? So I understand it. So I can't speak from that perspective.
Exactly.
Can I ask a question? Sorry to cut you. So, given that you went to Serakunda to sell water, how do you view the sort of conversation we had about these kids that are selling nana, banana, and all that stuff? Because, for example, think about how you got access to the water that you were selling. How what was your mind frame around why you sold it? Was that what was available to you?
That's at that point. That's what was selling. That was the demand.
Okay.
Right.
So you reacted to the market.
So it wasn't me really. It was my sister giving me water to go sell at Dipakunda.
Okay.
I was not doing it myself. Right. I was doing other stuff like ferrai for survival.
Yeah.
Purum, aluminium. So money you get from this, you buy yourself e-clothes. Like crepes and an outfit that your parents usually wouldn't afford. So you rubber.
Yeah.
But the water part, it was. So there's a difference now and before. Before it was very, very physical, right?
Yeah.
You selling stuff like what ndox bu gaay dee def si mbuus noonu, mbuusi naan boobu bu mag boobu noonu ñu taka ko.
Glass.
Understand?
Pure water, they call it Nigeria.
It's not the pure water was small.
Yeah, this one is the
compared to
big one, and
it's
they
the big
normally
one.
freeze it.
Okay. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I know
So
exactly
like
what it
a
is.
bucket full, you walk in Serakunda, because in Serakunda people are walking, they need to drink. And the naan was expensive and it was too small, right? So they just want tap water. They just want to drink.
Yeah.
So there's like a market for it. And my sister would put that on my head and go sell.
Yeah.
I've sold minty, like put it in some kind of a tray, hold it in your hand and walk in around Serakunda selling it. The only thing I didn't sell was cigarette because my family didn't really,
You condone that.
Muslims,
No, but going to that and what you're doing now, because we were talking about it earlier about how
So where I was coming is this. I am far from being wealthy or being rich or being anything, right? I don't really have a bank account. we were talking
about that earlier.
We were talking about that earlier. Like, personally, I don't have a personal bank account, which is a shocker to a lot of people, but...
You just put it on your mattress?
No, I'm just...
No, I'm just joking.
No, because the thing is, I see to break out of the poverty cycle.
Yeah.
It's really, really hard. Because the thing is, you don't have something to fall back on, right? If something happens to me right now, I don't have a family to go back to and be like, this guy will take care of me, right?
Yeah.
If I'm sick and there's nothing I can do about it, I don't really have anyone to fly me to. I don't even have anyone to pay for AfriMed for me to fix myself.
So it's
talk
all
less
on
of
you.
flying you out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's, some people see you in a certain position, they don't really realize how you get there.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of obstacles you have to overcome. And one of my understanding, especially in the poor neighborhoods, is there's a lot of egos, right? There's a lot of egos. Sometimes, if you're in a certain position, you just have to be a little bit creative and you can get out of it. You just have to think. And I guess this is where the idea of free thinking comes about. Like, how can you isolate your personal feelings, right? Just open it a little bit. Just look at things for how they are. And I think this is where capitalists, they use this formula, right? So whatever they do, capitalists calculate everything that they do. If they see Brikama as it might be a very good place to invest in, right? They've thought about how they've basically spread out where they're going to make their money, right?
Yeah.
Then again, they don't really care about what happens in the community that they usually invest in. They just see money and they want to make as much as possible. So if you are someone that's in a society, in an environment like this, my advice to you would be, things are not done to you, they're done for you, right? This is a quote Jay-Z said on a podcast, which it just clicked, right? And there's this guy called Vosi Tembakwayo. He's a South African motivational speaker and investor, and he's wealthy, and he usually gives advice that appeal to a lot of to the masses, because the masses are mostly the poor, right? Because he was from there, so he explains to them how you can get out of this cycle of poverty, right? You just have to think a little bit.
Yeah.
And I feel like the conditions sometimes they are so bad, it's hard to really think objectively.
I have a question though. Oh, not a question, I'll comment. But regarding regarding the capitalism thing you said about capitalists, they see the world for how it is, and then they react to it in a certain way in order to, chase revenue.
Yeah.
So I think that's the aspect of analyzing and seeing something.
Right.
It's just a human thing. It's ingenuity. It's how we've always behaved in environments. You go to water, you can swim. You go to fire, it's going to burn you. That's just you how you perceive it. For capitalists, capitalism is the perspective that you look at it with. So if I look at this environment, I could think, oh, this place needs more support for people in this way. This place needs development in order to serve the local community in this way. And in another, from another perspective, I can think this place is somewhere where I can make money. And that's where capitalism gets its criticism from. Because it's not an objective thing. It's a perspective of how you look at something. And I feel as though in the society that we live in, we almost can't afford to have that type of situation. We need to find ways of adding value to society and community. Innovative ways of adding value into society. If you do want to be a businessman, make sure that it benefits the country and it pushes it forward.
Yeah.
If you are looking at how you're analyzing it, make sure it's with the intention of improving what's going on. And it shouldn't be from the top down, it should be from the bottom up. Because the bottom take up the majority of the people that live here.
So you're saying they should have a little bit of empathy?
No, I think they should have empathy, yes, of course, but empathy isn't actionable. Empathy is a feeling. They need to be intentional with how they do things. They need to say, okay, the same way they're analyzing in order to see how can I maximize revenue, how can I maximize the value that I add to this community? Is how they can do that. And the analytical ability is there for them to make money. Use that so that you can make money and you can add value.
Yeah, like by providing either
that'll be
service or something.
the empathy side, right?
No, it's a realist side because, okay, let me put it this way. Like, as a businessman, right? Let's say I'm trying to run a business in Gambia. One of the biggest problems in Africa is that, for example, there are a lot of people are of employment age, but they're underskilled.
Right.
They're undereducated. If I add value to a community, I make sure people are going to school, people are building up skills, people have opportunities that feeds into my business. It brings me more employment, more skills. It kickstarts different industries that could enable my business to do better.
Yeah.
That's an analytical way where you can justify it to yourself in a selfish way why you should add, let's say not empathy, let's say compassion into your business. But it's not that. It's that the fact that everything is cyclical. What you feed in, what you feed in is what then you can get out. If the standards of living for the average person here is going down, that means basic things like getting access to the internet they can't do. So let's say I want to start a tech company in the future. How can I hire people from here to work in my company when they haven't gone to school, they have no access to technology, and they can't access the internet? How can I do that? And one of the key benefits for me, let's say, just to frame it in a selfish way, one of the key benefits for me as a Gambian to come from abroad to come here would be cheaper labor. And so I can't even benefit from that if I can't hire Gambians. So then it brings about this whole thing, and that's just talking about it from a business perspective. Then we have to talk about it from a human perspective. Like, generally, we're a communal society, right? Gambians, like, if you go to someone's house, they're eating, they invite you over to eat. That's changing a bit in some places, but just what we grew up on. Yeah. If you see someone that's hungry, you feed them. If someone asks you for something, you give it to them. Even you, a few years ago, I know when I lived in England for the first time, I remember I hung out with you in London, and one of the funniest things is with a bottle of water. You guys got a bottle of water, you and your friendship group, who you stayed in Gambia longer than I did. You got a bottle of water, you opening and a boy nana for me to drink first. And I just really like, you know what I mean? It's these simple things that are ingrained in our society. We should be looking out for each other first before anything else. We are as good as the people who are at the very bottom of society, quote unquote, in this sort of from our lens of income.
Right.
That's our base. That's what I would consider our standard in this country. And that's what we should continuously work to raise.
To look at like the whole thing in like wider perspective as well. Even though like we're trying to develop and we're trying to move forward or whatever, but then the current circumstances we find ourselves in makes it so hard. It's because, like we said, the reality is everyone's trying to like make it. Everyone's trying to defy odds. Everyone's trying to like, find another way to sort of like better themselves as well as their families or even their own circumstances. It's because if we look at it in a like wider perspective, majority of people here, it's like they either live in hand to mouth or like, the struggle is the struggle compared to like, people like being well off and like in terms of the jobs, in terms of like education or whatever, like, there's so much in terms of an imbalance, which makes it sort of hard to look at everyone in the way and be like, yes, everyone is in like, everyone is cool, well in Yapangsi Jam or whatever. So when you're looking at it, it's like the majority, it's like there's more people or like more of like a majority of people that are like really on like the negative side compared to the people on the positive. So it's like now if we're looking at it in a way where how do we find that balance? Because now like we see that there's a problem, and the problem is like even though the people that are like having it good or like, probably well off in a way, they're still sort of like still affected in a way by certain like problems that are still existing, which is like certain people's reality because maybe, like their circumstance isn't just like financially okay or whatever in order to be able to tackle these challenges. You feel me? So just like I just thought I'd just add that to what you said as well.
It's real.
Yeah.
And it's just I think as people, it's very much necessary for us. In the process of being innovative, in being what's the word, like motivated and driven, is to look at what we can do to improve what's going on here. Like that should be our mindset. Even if you look at the best businesses in the world react to a need that people have.
Yeah.
And we have a unlimited amount of needs that are not being met at the moment.
Thank you.
So a lot of people when we're thinking about doing business, like just speaking on the capitalist aspect, we need to now make sure that our main focus and our main intention is looking at how best we can add value to society. And the thing about profits is if you add value, you're gonna make money.
Right.
They need you, you know, but also you're making their lives better.
Mm-hmm.
And even something that I was even talking about is the ways that businesses give back to communities, because I think a lot of times a lot of businesses come, it could be whatever it is, and they're benefiting from something from the local community, be it land, be it cheap labor, being whatever it is, and they may not be giving back as much.
Yeah.
And I think, and it's not even a point to criticize or point fingers at anyone. It's just to say that we need to sort of adjust that mindset, because the same way in a granular level we can sort of have this level of compassion for each other. If we see each other, we say hi to people that we don't know on the road. Yeah. We're communal in that way. In the same way that needs to be expanded, even when we go to the realm of business, because and just like trade or whatever we're doing, we need to now think about, okay, everyone says business about making money. They make business into this rigid thing. And what you mentioned about subjectivity and perspective is that the reality is that there is kind of no way how it is, you know? Everything is different. Like how it is to me is different to how it is to you. How it is to him is different to how it is to me. Because he's an artist, like he's going out to certain environments that are different. The dynamics are different. If you ask him to describe the world exactly as how he sees it, it's a completely different world from exactly how I see it and yours. Mm-hmm. And I feel as though when talking about objectivity, it's very difficult to be objective. And I know, like, even when I was younger, I used to, not younger, but like literally 3 years ago, I had a conversation. Same guy that told me about me doing it for fun and him doing it for what's the word? Survival. I was talking about being objective, and he was just like, you can't be objective. Mm-hmm. And I said, of course, you can sort of somewhat relinquish your feelings and look at things for just how they are. But looking at something is analyzing. And analyzing something is based on a perspective that we're looking at it as. Mm. Like knowledge is on the eye of the beholder. Like whatever knowledge that you derive from something, whatever information that you ingest is based on, is you put into it as much as you take out. Mm-hmm. In a similar way to how me and you could read a book right now, I could tell you what are the 10 things you take from this book, and they'll be different to the 10 things that I take from that book. And even, I know the point of religion, I know that before we came, this is something that we were meant to touch on, but religion's a perfect example of that. If you look at, right now, the denomination that exists in Gambia, around Gambia and Senegal, Murid, Tijan, then there's Sunni, Shia, Sufis, that look at the Quran. They're reading from the same Quran, right? Mm-hmm. But they have taken different things from it, and they've dedicated their lives to it. Because knowledge is like that. You take out, but you also don't come empty-handed. Mm-hmm. And I think that point is really important, because I mentioned the free thinking and being a man thing, and you mentioned about how you have to look at it from the perspective of a man because you're a man. And that's exactly how it works with subjectivity and objectivity. We can't completely relinquish where we are and what the experiences that we have. Even at times when I think I'm being so innovative, I'm like doing something that, like, wow, like I'm doing something cool. I'm going to meet a family member, and it turns out they're the same way. Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh, so that's where it came from. Yeah. Like it's not like it's nothing new under the sun. Mm-hmm. And it's very difficult for us to free ourselves from that. I think when it comes to like and even free thinking, I like that idea though, because it's like we should be thinking for ourselves, and that's where free thinking comes in. It's not that we're thinking in a way, in this abstract, objective way where there's a truth that we all live under. If you see what Nietzsche said at the time, he said God is dead. But the point about God being dead was not that God literally is dead. It was that
the idea of God.
No, through the centuries, when religion with the rise of secularization and emergence of science, which was giving a theory of the universe and the world, it was now answering questions that were only left to religion, and the narrative of religion was the truth. Mm-hmm. And as soon as that disconnect happened, then the idea of truth and objectivity just sort of didn't exist anymore. Now there are different perspectives that are emerging, because there isn't this unifying force of faith or religion in a particular region that kind of bound everyone to a certain viewpoint. Mm-hmm. And we live in that post-truth world at the moment, where everything is subjective, everything is different. You go on the internet, your timeline and my timeline are different because of the algorithm. What you see on the internet is completely different. When you use a search bar in Google in Gambia, and I use it in England, the options that come up are completely different. Maybe the results are different, I'm not entirely sure, but I think they are different based on your region, based on what people from that region click on the most. So in the world, it's very difficult to say that this how it is. Because how is it really? And what can we use to back that up?
So that's a good point. And my question to that would be, can that be problematic? Maybe you can jump on it, because you were saying something about there's this video we should react on. But you were talking about it.
Yeah.
How we'll come back to this point, but how the government really is not using taxpayers' money to do good. You're talking about it.
Yeah, because for me, like, I feel like for me, just my whole perspective when it comes to looking at problems, because I feel like problems is something that's always going to be there. So it's like when we're looking at problems, and it's like, it's always levels. You know what I'm trying to say? So it's like, you know, kuneka hamsa problem, where I'm going kuneka problem, I'm telling you, know, it's like there's always an imbalance. But it's like, okay, so when we're always trying to look at the problem and this and that, are we just going to always drown into looking at the problem? Or trying to find, okay, so how do we jump out, or how do we break from this cycle, or how do we break from this bubble?
Right.
We look at the problem, we understand the problem. We'll then try to find the source of the problem. And then once we find the source, then we try to at least find different opportunities, different ways that, you know, we can connect the problem to a solution. Okay, so these are the right solutions in order for us to be able to do that. And then if we're looking at Gambia in a way, because for example, like we all agree, like we're one of the smallest countries in the world, but I like to call us tiny but mighty, because even though we're small, I feel like there's a Gambian in every corner of the world, bro. Because like the amount of people I've even met, they'll tell you like they've met a Gambian here and there or whatever, but
Doing
that's
incredible
just,
things.
you know what I'm saying? So I feel like that's just like God's blessing in general. But going back to the topic of a conversation, so yeah, so when we're looking at the problems or whatever that we all face as a people, so it's like majority of it is what the basic things, the cost of living, like, you know, infrastructure in a way where like the roads or whatever, because all of that adds to like the stress or adds to the problem. It makes transportation harder. It makes going to one place to another harder. It increases like, you know, the crime rate or whatever in a way, because accidents is now, people are breaking road laws and stuff like that. You know, these are all problems in a way where like from a little thing, different problems start growing from it. But then we take it back to sort of like the example you gave of like the kids or the families begging and stuff like that. Yes, we agree. But then again, I would say if we're looking at the solution in a way, so the people that we can sort of like feel like they can help in that sense is like we can't expect it to be their parents, because most of them are out there begging with their parents. However, we have a government here, or let's say an organization, because I don't like to always like blame the government or sound like I'm blaming, like, you know, because that always makes it political.
They have their own set of problems.
Exactly, they have their own set of problems. But however, I feel like, you know, in every sort of like environment, every society, let's say there's always like a hierarchy, or there's always a leader. Let's say even in our houses or whatever, like the dad is always meant to be the leader. So if there's any problem or whatever, cash by Jagne or whatever, who would you expect to sort of like tell the problem first? It would be like the man of the house or the leader. And then the leader from then, you would expect them to find a solution. Why? Because you feel like the whole family or like everyone's comfortable with you being the leader, or giving you that sort of like respect or that like certain things have to be done. So now, you being the leader now, you've been put there, so it's up to you to sort of like deduce like ways in which you can sort of like find solutions from this. Hence why you have like, you know, fathers where like they have money, or when the salary comes in or whatever, that the pastor will sort of like give it to the mum or whatever. That's them sort of coordinating how this and that would go, and then through that make sure, okay, this and that is sorted and that is sorted. So if we take that ideology now and put it, let's say, in terms of organizations or whatever, the problems are there, the strugglings are there or whatever. However, we have organizations, we have agencies or sort of offices, or let's say the government, in terms of their different sort of branches in that we expect to sort of find these solutions for us. Because let's say if there's in terms of like the roads or whatever, I'm sure there's like someone in charge of, okay, we use these roads every day. Because Gambia, I don't care who you are or whatever, like when you're going to work or whatever, or wherever you are, you must sort of like go through the main strips in order to get to wherever you are. So in a way where we all sort of like either benefit or sort of like are affected by the problems in which we face. But then it's sort of like, looking at the bigger picture to understand, okay, cool. So if we just come and like understand that there should be a system, or there should be sort of like a tradition put in place where it's sort of everyone can just get used to it in a way where, okay, problem banging it, or there's a problem here, the solution needs to, okay, start from this. And then if at all, like, it starts from the leader or someone that's up there starts in a way, eventually, not like maybe overnight or whatever, eventually things are going to start going like, in order to like go back to normal, or we're going to start seeing change in a way.
Right.
Because I'd say looking at the video like we're referring to today, this guy was pretty much just like saying what we're talking about in like a bigger scale, because they probably have like all of the calculated statistics and stuff like that, seeing how things are going on, and then figuring out, okay, cool, so how do we find solutions and this and that.
Maybe you should watch this video and
Can I add something to that quickly? Is that so on the government side, completely, like, we need to, it's what I was talking about with the children begging. It's very difficult to blame them or say it's their attitude or anything like that. You have an environment that isn't being cultivated in the way that it should to benefit them. Regarding the family thing though, I find it interesting when you mentioned that, because I thought about it when you're talking about it, and I'm like, leader and the dad, but you mentioned something as well. Like you said, when the pay comes in, the dad gives it to the mom. And it's the mom who then coordinates everything that happens in the house. In reality,
would either be the mom or the dad would also like help in a way, because I feel like it's in a way because the mom has a role to play as well. Do you understand? In a way, but the leader understands that. Because the leader, the dad will be, okay, cool, it's my money, I'm the leader of the house, I'm gonna buy everything. But it's also the leader's job to realize, okay, cool, so the mom also has a role to play,
who's able to do,
which is able to do so and so. But then if I give them that money, then we can have the conversation. I can also listen to what they have to say, and then two heads is better than one in a way. We can find.
So
no, I get you.
The thing is, I don't want to lose that train. It's interesting because society is changing. You're coming from a very traditional but right, you're looking at things from a very, very traditional.
That's true as well.
But we live in a society now where there's usually double income.
Exactly.
But how would that dynamic look like? Because
and regarding double income, I think the dynamic looks like a double labor for a lot of women. Because what I was gonna get at regarding the depas is like just traditionally, and we can witness this for generations. The household is the father is usually a leader, right? But if they needed something, the one person who knows where everything is usually the mom. The one person who directs most things and allocates the resource that they have is the mom. So if I was looking at it from a company perspective, the mom would be the CEO and the dad would be like the sales team or the workers. And it's similar to like bees, for example. The queen is the woman, and then the workers then bring the resources, and then they then supply it to the people.
Exactly.
So from that perspective, who is actually the leader? Just more functional perspective. We're talking about how we view it.
It's a woman. In that point,
environment,
in that is a woman.
Yeah,
the
even
woman is the
traditionally, how we
leader.
view, how like a lot of guys will like, we want to work for money for women, like we're working for them in that perspective, from that perspective.
Exactly.
And it's like, and it's just interesting to like think about how like we view that and what leadership is and how we run households and stuff.
And now, what I feel like what's happening, there's a lot of, I don't want to downplay this, but there's a lot of gender-based violence, domestic violence that happens from men to women, right? That is something that happens on it, daily. I don't want to make it sound like this is not a reality. But another thing that I've realized is society have changed in a way where the roles are kind of starting to flip, right? Where women generally want to now also be the ones who go outside and make money, right?
I think it's the circumstances, isn't it?
Yeah, and the society.
I think post-World War II, when the men had to go to war and the women had to go into work, they gained a certain level of freedom and income that they didn't want to relinquish. And I know it's different in different parts of the world, but in this part of the world, women have been working forever. It's not a new thing.
What I mean, that's not what I'm saying.
In terms of being a breadwinner or also being...
just being in the corporate world itself, where usually, traditionally it was a male dominated field, right? And this is because of circumstances where you're expected to go out, make money, bring it back in, and then we will redistribute the resources that you're bringing in, right? And usually that's a one-income family where the woman is just home, being a homemaker, right? And the guy is outside actually trying to make ends meet.
Yeah.
By making sure there's food on the table and there's shelter and people are just comfortable.
It goes back to the women being marginalized thing, because I feel like it was a time when women weren't allowed into that world. It's not that they didn't want to go or it was the way that things were. It was just they weren't allowed to go into that world. And when that became open, there's a lot more women who are now getting into these positions.
Yeah.
However, there's still that marginalization that's existed since before, that still exists, that holds women back. Even the thing you mentioned about a dual income. So imagine a dual income here, like just generally. If two people are working and then they came home, just typically, I can't project this onto the entire country, but the woman will still have to do the things that you'd expect her to do at home anyway.
Sure.
So they'll be working and they'll come home as well and do more work. And when it's not, we tend to think that things have changed now because women are getting into these positions and everything. But to a certain degree, I believe, as men, we don't support as much in that regard.
Yeah.
Because I feel as though when a dual income is being made, then now everything becomes everyone's responsibility. There's no order. The order has changed.
Yeah.
There's no structure that we can fall back on and say this is how things are meant to be. The world is a completely changing landscape. I can't expect to approach the world in the way my grandfather did because he comes from a different time.
Yeah.
If I went into the past and I approached the world how I approach it now, wouldn't work out. If he came now, it wouldn't work out.
Yeah.
And similarly, with family structures changing, society changing, we must react to it.
Yeah, I think
Because
it's all of the influence. That's how we're also influenced by society changing, by how things changing as well. It also affects in a way because, like you mentioned, like we're in a generation now, or like we find it in a way where women also want to be like, frontline, or they want to be in the limelight. And I'd say one of the reasons would be because of like the influence they see, how society has influenced certain women are like, making it happen, or like doing things that they're like, wow, I know I have the superpower in me, but I've never been given the opportunity to harness it because I've always been, traditionalized to feel like, yes, like the man has to do this and the woman has to do that. But then again, I feel like the way society would then influence them in a way, you're seeing one other person doing it, another person doing it, eventually that's going to motivate you or inspire you in a way to want to tap into that as well. And eventually that is how I feel like when they say like, when someone like puts a spark in your head, or you just see somebody just like sparks a light in your head, probably that's just the spark from them just seeing it from someone else. However, like, I just wanted to go back to the leadership thing I was talking about as well, because I feel like I might have lost my chain of thought in a way, because the example I was given in terms of the leadership thing because we're talking about, the problem as well as the solution. So the example I gave where it's like, for example, in a household where we all would put the expectation in the leader in order to sort of like guide us in a way. So it would even come down to like us looking at the government now, or let's say the organizations that are in positions to help in order to make the lives of like the people easier in a way. So I'd say, for example, like, we have like, there's been like people that have like elected certain people to be in certain environments or agencies where like they're in position of like power, where they can sort of like call the shots or be able to guide in a way where certain things can be put into place for things to be better. So that's what I mean in a way where if the leaders or if the people in that position of power are able to sort of like look at things in a general way, I'm not saying they're not, but in like, if it's more of like it's more of like a norm, it's more of like a traditional thing where everyone's on the same page and all of these things are like happening, eventually like those little changes would then lead to things being changed, and then those little changes would then lead to like, people's lives being affected, like rather than for the worse but for the better, because the problems are already there.
Yeah, and the point on government, even with that clip that we saw, is that I feel as though a lot more needs to be done, because I feel that, granted, we have to contextualize our government in the geopolitical landscape. Our government is disadvantaged when it comes to acquiring resources for us and bringing in the revenue the Gambia needs in order to develop. But at the same time, there are certain ways where we're being very, I don't know how to even put it. It's the sense we are misguided is the right word. We're very misguided with how we handle the resources that we have, and be it money, be it whatever that we have. And with the money comes, the aspect of corruption, and how that even there's an index out there, a corruption index that's prevalent in our region of the world, and we can't afford corruption in this country when we have so little. because how can you, with the little that we can build on, also there are people cutting slices. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, that in the long term, that's less revenue for the government and more debt that they have to repay. So that doesn't lead us to any point where any of us get anything good out of it. And it's a very difficult position for us to be in. And what the guy said, he was in Parliament, isn't he? And I believe, could we get his name, please? Because I believe it's important for us to know that.
To refer back to him.
Yeah.
As a reference. I feel like even if we could have the video play,
That's
and then
what I was
use that
thinking.
as like a.
I think we should watch it.
Yeah, because I can't lie. When I watched this video earlier today, it hit a nerve.
The concern of our
Unfortunately, I can't
Yeah, the sound.
put it on the TV.
Yeah, but either way,
and eat the best and treat our people in the best manner because the Gambia deserve it.
Oh shit.
yeah, we're very interested. But I think like one thing I've always wished for though, like, cause one thing is like, I don't underestimate us in any way.
We can't.
And when I say us, I mean as a Gambian people, because yes, we like, cause either way, we were all raised under the same sun, regardless of like the imbalance in Hamga Ki Jagne or you went to that school or you went to this school. I feel like intelligence somehow shouldn't be measured by
Education, like
what I'm
formal
saying,
education.
You feel me?
It's what I was saying about the kids selling, because they were getting
Exactly.
skills from that.
You get me? Because or even certain people, like they'll be like, just because that person can speak better English than you, makes them smarter.
Yeah.
But I don't believe that, because if anything, English is just a language.
It's not our
So
language.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
the internet is a little bit
Slow.
slow.
But we can just like add to that
Yeah,
anyway.
I was making a point which I kind of lost, but now that you mentioned it, I remembered. So I said before it was a little bit physical, right? And I gave the example of the doh in a bucket, right? They've really evolved, right? Because you have to be creative. You can't do the same. Society is evolving now. Nobody has water and be selling it in the market. I was done with, right? But now they're doing something else. But the problem is you're still in the cycle of your creativity is just trying to get money from someone as much as possible in very creative. You're not expecting a lot, but you just need enough to survive on. And you have to be creative in order to get money from them, because we live in a society where it's run by money. Whatever you want, you can't just go to understand? Like, the idea of selling mango was very foreign.
Exactly.
But now if you want to eat mangoes, all the mango trees have been chopped off. You have to go to someone and buy it. And they're going through the extent of getting these mangoes, which is very physical intensive, and then bringing it at the likes of traffic lights and trying to get as much money as possible, right? And you can't be mad at that.
Yeah.
Sometimes we complain. So we get fruits at traffic lights. It's more expensive than anywhere else, right? You go to Sarakunda, it's maybe like half price or quarter of the price that you're buying it at traffic lights.
Yeah.
And most of the people that live around these areas are people that are making, they live beyond the average Gambian, right? They are making enough to be able to afford this 10 times, 20 times, and it wouldn't really affect their pockets.
Yeah.
But they're the ones that are really, really complaining, talking about prices, right? And it's a different reality, like you were saying. The money has been so inflated, prices has gone up. It's so high.
Price control and stuff.
These guys can't even afford that anymore.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that live in Pipeline, Fajara, they can't afford it,
Yeah.
right? And they hold back on spending or trying to support some of these people that are trying to just make ends meet. They're just trying to make as little as possible to be able to go back home and go to Serakunda and Duga, Jena Maro, Jena, a few things to cook, right? And I think we're one of the things this is affecting us. We're becoming a society where people are becoming stingy. Right?
I think it's the move from a communal society to an individualist society.
Exactly.
It's happening a lot more, because if you see with urban migration, a lot of people are coming from places where they don't know people around the Combo area.
Right.
And a lot of people from the Combo area, like people from Bakau, moving to Brusubi and further, Tangi, Tujereng, all of these different places that are far off. And now they're starting new communities that don't necessarily know each other. Which is, for example, what would be a problem for a metropolitan city like London, where there's so many people from so many different places, there isn't that sense of community for a lot of people. And I think there's another aspect of this as well, where, for example, like regarding the middle class in Gambia, I believe we're in a point where, and this is probably global as well, but Gambia, where the middle class is now being strained a lot more than ever. As we were talking about, even us on holiday, we're seeing how the prices are a bit too high for us, even for what we used to come here.
What we used to, exactly.
I was here earlier last year. I spent about 2-3 months here. And from then to now, prices of everything has gone up. And we import a lot, and we aren't producing enough, or we aren't trading with other African countries that produce what we have.
I'd say that's one key. That's a key factor as well.
And even when you look at agriculture that we talk about, I think we only grow about 20% of what we need here.
Right.
But there's so much farmland. However, but I feel as though we're leaning onto the services industry, tourism, and all of these things that aren't necessarily productive for us. Like growing up when we were younger, if you needed to do something or you wanted to have fun as a kid, like, where would you go to? We would be like, oh yeah, we're going to go to this hotel to swim. We're going to go there for lunch. We're going to go there for dinner. This, that, and the other. The infrastructure and some of the best things that we have available here are in hotels. Things that Gambians who live here don't stay there.
Yeah.
It's very rare. So who does that benefit? And what's the philosophy of our development in that case then?
Right.
Because the fastest internet, you could probably find at a hotel. Like whatever we can think of, we could probably
electricity
find the best
or whatever.
thing.
Yeah,
Most
the
stable
service
electricity,
and everything.
Yep, food, probably at a hotel. Everything.
Yeah. So I guess this just comes back to the point that I was trying to make earlier, which is personal perception and when things are objective. And I think you were saying there's no absolute truth that we can all say like this is it, right?
Yeah.
Things are more complicated than that. Things are more subjective. I think you put it somehow like that.
Yeah, in a way.
But it is a fact that, objectively speaking, in Gambia, people are poor.
Yeah.
Right? Whether your personal perception, because of your experience being able to afford whatever you want, it still doesn't. You can't.
Yeah, no, it's an objective
right?
metric. Yeah.
To like scale them.
These are some of the things that I'm
of
saying,
poor,
and the reason why I'm saying this is because sometimes we are so into our own feelings, our own thoughts, our own the way where we're kind of blind to what's right in front of us, right? And I think this is where Gambia is heading, where we are currently, where things are becoming so about yourself, about just your immediate surrounding, that you're not really aware that there's a community right next to Talibi Fini, and they're going through really hard times, even though they live in a community of rich people. Like, why?
It's like a dog eat dog.
Exactly.
Sort of like
you see what I'm saying, right?
I feel like I haven't like
so
an ideology.
I just want to kind of come explain this where we can dissect it. Not this is not an attack or anything like that. It's a conversation. We just want to try to design it and rip it apart a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm really, it's really interesting you mentioned that, because when you even look at things happening, like even from outside looking in, or even when you're on the ground as well, it's like, it's evident that, things are like getting harder, like, prices are going up, cost of living and everything and all of that. And I feel like with the average human as well, if we're told like everything around you is maybe like, let's say you feel like you're in the same position, but then everything around you is changing. Yeah. And it's so hard for you to keep up.
Right.
It's going to get to a point
You're
where
regressing technique.
So
you're stagnated.
You feel me? So it's like when you have your back against the wall now, where it's like, you have no one to look over, you have no one to talk to or whatever. It's gone from like, you can go into every house and have like, damn it, and then now, or to certain people, like now it's like, they're even talking, but then I'm gonna like, maybe instead of doing 5 cups now it's 2 or 3. Yeah. Because, I'm trying to say like,
it's tight.
It's tight, you know what I'm saying? So everyone's like, feeling like they have someone's hand on their necks and stuff like that. So eventually, it leads to sort of like, everyone wanting to be for themselves more than, like more
Times of
communal.
crisis, you can only worry about your immediate surroundings.
Exactly. It's even we're even seeing that with families somehow. It's even sort of like breaking families apart, because then you'd have like families where, this family's sort of like, more like this is the breadwinner of the family, and then before you'd have like a breadwinner, they'll sort of like sort themselves out and then like be able to like sort other people.
Extended
Eventually they would make it and then return that favor. So it's like it's a trend. It continues. However, now due to the fact that things are being more expensive, everyone's finding themselves in like the same bucket.